week before Christmas, and I'd taken a few days off work to decompress out at my uncle's cabin. He was heading to Oregon to see his daughter, and told me I could use the place if I wanted some peace and quiet. The cabin was a couple miles outside a little town called Whitbridge, maybe an hour and 15 outside of St. Paul. His cabin sat about half a mile from the nearest neighbor, backed up to a stretch of woods that looked untouched since the Ice Age. It was the first time in over a year where I could hear myself think. I got there just after noon, unloaded a bag of clothes and some groceries, shoveled the walk and settled in. I remember thinking how still everything felt. Not peaceful like a vacation brochure, but quiet in a way that made you realize how much noise you're used to. Traffic, phones buzzing, people talking in the apartment upstairs. Out there you hear your own breathing, your bones settling, the house creaking when it adjusts to the cold. I went to bed early, and I slept hard. The second night, I woke up around 3 in the morning groggy and annoyed, just needing to pee. I wasn't scared or anything. The place didn't feel spooky. I just really didn't want to get out from under the covers. But nature wins. So I threw on a hoodie and shuffled barefoot down the short hallway to the bathroom. On the way I passed the kitchen and noticed something strange. The motion sensor light above the back porch was on. Now, these lights are finicky. Sometimes they click on if the wind's blowing hard or if a raccoon wanders too close. I wasn't immediately alarmed. I stood at the window for maybe a minute, watching the backyard. Nothing moved. No shadows. Just the beam of white light cutting across the porch and hitting the snow beyond. I figured it was wind or maybe a rabbit. Used the bathroom and went back to bed. Didn't even think about it again until the next morning. It had snowed lightly overnight. Maybe a half inch, just enough to smooth everything over. When I stepped outside with the shovel, I saw them right away. Footprints. Bare feet. There was one set, starting at the tree line maybe 30 yards out, walking in a straight line across the backyard, up the 3 wooden steps and across the porch, right to the back door. And then nothing. No prints going back. No prints going back. No sideways shuffle. Just one slow approach, and it ended inches from the door. I stood there staring at them, shovel in hand, trying to make the math work. They weren't melted or distorted. These weren't old prints. They were clean and defined, each toe visible. Whoever left them had cold feet. You could tell by the way the toes splayed a little, like they were stiff or numb. I followed them to the edge of the porch, and looked out at the woods, nothing but trees. No movement, no marks where someone might have ducked back out. I checked the door, still locked. I stood there longer than I probably should have, trying to come up with some rational explanation. Some guy walking barefoot in the snow in the middle of nowhere, maybe high, maybe mentally ill. It didn't sit right, but I didn't have a better theory. Either way, I locked the doors again, top and bottom, and pushed a chair under the knob, just for good measure. That night I moved one of the iron fireplace pokers into the bedroom. Not because I thought I'd need it, but because I couldn't stand the idea of not having something in arm's reach if I heard a noise. That night I decided to take a sleeping pill. I didn't want to spend hours lying awake wondering if I'd hear footsteps or scratching or something even worse. I needed to sleep. I left a lamp on in the living room, turned off the rest of the lights, and crawled into bed. It didn't work. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up again. No clue what time it was. The house was quiet, but not in the same way. There was this sound, faint, rhythmic. At first I thought it was the furnace again, but something about it felt wrong. Breathing. I held my breath. It stopped. Waited maybe a full minute, lying there absolutely still, trying to convince myself it had been a dream or a weird pipe noise. I let my breath out and sat up slowly. The room was cold. Then it started again. Wet, shallow breathing, like someone trying to suck air through a blocked nose. Uneven, strained. I got out of bed and moved as quietly as I could down the hallway. The glow from the living room lamp spilled across the floor, just enough for me to see. No sounds of wind. No creaking. Just that breathing. Closer now. Coming from the kitchen, I edged forward, heart pounding. My legs felt numb, but I kept moving. When I reached the end of the hall, I flicked on the kitchen light. Nothing. No one was there. The back door was still locked. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. I checked the pantry, the closet by the washer, even the lower cabinets. As ridiculous as that felt. Empty. Then the sound stopped. I turned around just in time to hear the fridge kick on behind me with a mechanical click, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I didn't go back to bed that night. I sat in the living room with the poker across my lap, watching the back door. Just waiting. The footprints from the morning were still faintly visible through the new dusting of snow. I told myself I'd leave in the morning, no matter what, but the final night made that decision for me. I was on the couch around 1 a.m., lights blazing in every room, drinking hot stale coffee just to stay awake. I didn't even pretend to relax. I packed what little I cared to bring, and my keys were already in my coat pocket. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, one step every few seconds. Deliberate, then a dragging sound, like metal scraping across wood. I froze. The motion light clicked on. I moved to the window and crouched low, just enough to see. There was a woman barefoot, pale legs against the snow. She wasn't wearing a coat, just some kind of long shirt that clung to her skin like it was soaked. Her hair was dark and stringy, hanging down in front of her face like a curtain. She didn't shiver, didn't even seem cold. Her arms were locked behind her back, stiff and unnatural, like she was holding them there on purpose. Each step she took was careful, as if she were walking through glass. Behind her she dragged something. It was a snow shovel, but it was upside-down metal edge facing up, handle trailing behind her like some weird leash. The sound it made as it scraped the wooden boards was low and grinding. She didn't look up, just kept walking slowly around the porch, dragging that shovel. Step, 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 scrape. Then she stopped, turned, faced the door. Her shoulders hunched like she was bracing herself, her head tilted to the side slowly like she was trying to hear something, that breathing. It started again, louder now, rough and gurgling. I could hear it through the glass, even with my heart thudding in my ears. She stepped forward, crouched slightly, and tilted her head again, closer this time, inches from the glass, listening. I stayed perfectly still. My chest burned from not breathing. I thought if I moved even a twitch she'd hear it, react to it, come through the door. Then, with that same slow dreamlike motion, she straightened up, turned, and tiptoed to the edge of the porch. Her feet didn't make a sound, just the soft drag of the shovel behind her. She slipped into the woods and disappeared. I waited maybe 60 seconds tops. Then I grabbed my coat, wallet, and keys and got in the car. I didn't pack. I didn't turn anything off. I just drove. I made it back to the city a little after 6. I never went back. Never talked about it. Maya had flown out to California to spend the holidays with her parents. Her mom had just had surgery, and it made sense for her to go. I stayed back in Hill Springs Small, mostly forgettable town in southern Illinois. I told myself it'd be productive, peaceful. I'd have the house to myself, knock out the project, eat leftovers straight from the fridge, and maybe get a few days of quiet before the year ended. Our house sat just outside town, tucked behind a row of hickory trees, on a narrow two-lane road that didn't get plowed unless someone complained about it. Pretty in the fall, but by winter it felt like we were halfway between civilization and the edge of the world. It had snowed on and off that morning, big soft flakes that didn't seem serious at first. By late afternoon, though, it had started piling up. By dark, the road was completely blanketed, and the only tire marks were my own from earlier that week. Around 8, I went out back to grab more firewood. We had this rickety stack behind the garage. Nothing fancy, just an uneven pile of logs under a blue tarp, half of them damp, no matter how careful I was. I didn't bother with boots, just slipped on sneakers and jogged along the narrow trench I'd shoveled that morning. My hoodie was barely zipped. I figured I'd be out there for 30 seconds. Tops. I grabbed a few logs and turned back toward the house. That's when I noticed the footprints. Not mine. Definitely not mine. They started at the edge of the tree line and curved slowly toward the house, stopping near the side wall, just under the guest bedroom window. No other tracks nearby, no outdoing trail, no circles, no animal prints. Just the single path from the woods, like someone had stepped out, walked toward the house, and then, I don't know, disappeared. I stood there holding firewood and just stared. It took a second for my brain to catch up with my eyes. The stride was longer than mine, the shape wrong, narrower, deeper, looked like boots, not work boots or snow boots, something heavier, precise. I backed up slowly, trying not to make noise on the frozen snow, and went back inside, locked the door, then bolted it for good measure. I turned off all the lights in the front of the house and walked through each room, checking the back door, then the basement latch. Everything was locked. Everything looked exactly how I'd left it. The house creaked a little as the temperature dropped. I stood in the kitchen for a while, just listening. I couldn't shake this feeling like I'd just walked into a room someone else had been in seconds before. No real reason. Just that weird, subtle shift in the air. I kept telling myself it was nothing. maybe a hunter, maybe someone cutting through the property by mistake. But the thing that got me, the prints only came one way. Who walks out of the woods in a snowstorm, gets that close to a house, and then vanishes? I grabbed the hammer from the utility drawer and set it on the kitchen table, just in case. Then I made tea something familiar and sat in the living room with the TV turned low. Noise helped, so did pretending I wasn't slightly losing it. At around 10, the power cut out. No warning, no flicker. Just gone. The TV clicked off. The heater went quiet. The microwave clock went black. I sat there for a second, waiting for it to come back on. It didn't. I checked my phone, still had signal. No outages reported. I got up, went to the window, and peeked through the blinds. Across the road, the Tomlinsons' porch light was still glowing. Their Christmas lights were on too, blinking like nothing had happened. Whatever this was, it was just us. That's when I saw the yard again. The footprints were everywhere now. Not just a single line from the woods. Dozens, crisscrossing in every direction. Some looped back on themselves. Some stopped right under the windows. I counted 5 different spots where they pressed right up to the walls, like someone had walked the perimeter. Slowly, I turned toward the couch. There was a smudge on the window beside it. I hadn't seen it before. A face-shaped smear, right at eye level. You could make out the general-shaped forehead, nose, lips, like someone had leaned forward and looked in. I stepped back without meaning to. It felt like my body moved before I told it to. My phone was still on the kitchen counter. I went for it. Right as I picked it up, I heard a knock. Just one front door. I didn't move. I just stood there with the phone in my hand, frozen. Then another knock. But it wasn't from the front this time. It came from the back of the house, near the sliding door that led to the deck. I grabbed the hammer. My hand was shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. Another knock. Slower. Deliberate. From the side of the house now. No footsteps. No voices. Just this slow, steady rhythm like someone was tapping politely. Waiting. Then nothing. No more knocks. Just silence. I stayed in the hallway for at least 10 minutes. Barely breathing. I peeked through the front window again. Yard looked the same. Just snow and those strange, overlapping tracks. I called the police. The dispatcher was calm. She said someone would come by, but warned that roads were bad and it might take a bit. She offered to stay on the line with me. I didn't say no. About 25 minutes later, headlights lit up the yard. Sheriff's cruiser. I practically ran out to meet him. He was polite but cautious. Asked me to stay behind him while he walked the perimeter. He had a powerful flashlight, the kind that cut through snowfall like it wasn't even there. He followed the tracks, walked the entire yard, then out toward the tree line. That's when he got quiet. He turned back toward me and said, "You see where these end?" I looked. I hadn't noticed it before. All those tracks, dozens of them, just stopped. No lead out to the road. No trail disappearing into the woods. Just a mess of boot prints circling the house then. Nothing. He asked to check the house with me. We walked through together, each room, each closet. Nothing was moved. Nothing was broken. No signs of entry until we got to the basement door. It was shut. Still looked normal, but the bolt was unlatched, hanging loose. I was certain, absolutely certain, I'd locked it earlier. He went down first, flashlight sweeping the steps. Nothing down there. No footprints, no one hiding. Just cold cement and the faint smell of dust and old wood. He told me to keep the hammer close that night. I didn't sleep. Next morning I called a locksmith. Had every lock on the place changed out. Added new bolts, reinforced the back door, replaced the basement latch entirely. I shoveled the yard clean down to the grass in some places, just so I'd know if anyone came back. But nothing showed up. Not the next day, not the one after that. Maya flew back 5 days later. I picked her up from the airport and kept things casual. Told her we had a power outage, and I got a little freaked out being alone in the snow. My neighbor across the driveway, Celia, called me early one morning. Her pipes had frozen during one of those brutal early December freezes and ended up bursting overnight. She was heading to her sister's place in Rochester while plumbers sorted it out. She asked if I could check in on her place while she was gone. Just basic stuff. Make sure the thermostat was holding steady, check for leaks, grab her mail if I had time. She handed me the spare key, thanked me about 5 times, and told me to help myself to whatever was left in the fridge. Said her cousin might be stopping by to grab a few things, but wasn't sure exactly when. That detail barely registered at the time. I live on the other side of a duplex in Denton. This small town up north where nothing moves faster than the post office, especially when it snows. Her place is older than mine, same layout but a lot more creaks, and the insulation never quite got updated. So I figured I'd check in each evening, stay long enough to be a good neighbor, and then go back to my side with warm floors and functioning heat. The first couple nights were uneventful. Her house was always dark, always quiet. I'd do a quick lap kitchen, bathroom, thermostat, open a closet or two just to be thorough. The only thing I ever noticed was how cold it was, like the walls themselves were giving up heat. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just didn't want to be the guy who missed something obvious, and ended up with a flooded living room and a guilty conscience. Then came night 3. It was a little after 8 when I went over. The wind had picked up hard by then. I had to lean my shoulder into the door just to close it behind me. It clattered in a way that felt wrong, too loose in the frame. The whole place had that strange, still feeling, like when you walk into a hotel room you used last year and everything's familiar but not yours anymore. I made my usual rounds. Thermostat was still set at 62. Sink wasn't dripping. Nothing in the basement looked out of the ordinary. I was already halfway back to the front hall when something caught my eye. There was a mug sitting on the coffee table in the living room, half full and still steaming. I just stopped. Not like I paused, like my whole body just froze. That mug wasn't there before. I hadn't touched anything in the living room, let alone brewed a fresh cup. I stared at it, hoping maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was an old cup just placed weirdly and catching the light. Nope. Steam fresh. I looked around. There weren't any other signs of someone being there. No coats or shoes by the door. No footprints in the slush I'd already tracked in. No noise. I called out just once, calm but firm. No answer. I backed out slowly, locked the door behind me, and walked home in the dark, trying to convince myself that the cousin must have stopped by. Maybe I just missed them. Maybe they parked down the block. Maybe they drank fast. Next night, I almost didn't go back. I sat on my couch for a long time, just staring at the wall like it would decide for me. Eventually guilt won out, or maybe curiosity. I bundled up and crossed over again just before dark. This time, everything looked like I'd left it until I got to the back hallway. Her bedroom door was wide open. The light was on, and the bed had been dragged halfway out from the wall. That part was weird, but it was what was on the bed that got me folded clothes. Neatly, like someone had come home and unpacked her sweater, the green one with the little moth hole on the shoulder, socks, a pair of earrings I remembered her wearing on Thanksgiving. They were laid out on the nightstand, like she was just getting ready for bed. It didn't feel like a cousin grabbing a sweater. I backed out of the room, closed the door as gently as I could, and left the house without touching a single thing. That night I texted her. No response. I called straight to voicemail. I stared at my phone for a long time, wondering if I should be more worried than I already was. I barely slept. By the 5th night the snow had picked up again. Heavy, muffled, almost too quiet. I stayed in, tried to put it out of my mind, but around 10 something caught my eye through the kitchen window. Her porch light was on. That bulb had been out for months. She mentioned it once when we were talking about the wiring on our side of the house, said the fixture was dead and she didn't know how to fix it, but now it was glowing soft yellow through the snow. I stood there for a long time watching. Then I grabbed my phone, pulled on my coat, and went over. Her front door was unlocked. Inside it was quiet, dark except for the soft glow coming from the hallway. That faint, burned coffee smell hit me again. More distinct this time. I called out once. Nothing. I wanted to leave. I really did. But if someone was there, if the cousin had shown up and gotten stuck or hurt, it'd be worse if I ignored it. So I went down the hallway. Her bedroom light was on again. This time, the bed was perfectly made. Pillows fluffed. Everything tucked. Next to the bed was a plastic shopping bag. Inside was a grocery receipt dated for that same day, just 2 hours earlier, and a disposable camera. No one sells those in Denton anymore. I checked the receipt again. The store was a gas station 40 or 50 miles east, in some tiny town I'd never heard of. I was just standing there staring at it when I heard the basement door open. Behind me, I hadn't touched the basement. I turned slowly, heart thudding like a drum in my ears. The door was swinging open on its own. Not fast, just wide enough for the shadows to change. Then I saw them. Footprints. Bare. Damp. Leading from the basement stairs, across the kitchen toward the pantry. I stood there, frozen, until I saw something behind the pantry door shift just slightly. That was it. I ran. No shame in it. I bolted out the front door, slammed it behind me, locked it without stopping, and sprinted through the snow back to my side. Once I got home, I locked everything. Front door, back door, windows, curtains, every light off. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, back against the closet, phone in hand. I kept trying to call her. Still nothing. I thought about calling the cops, but I couldn't explain it. Nothing was technically broken into. I had a key. It was her house. I just felt hunted. That's the only way I can describe it. Next morning, I opened my front door to find a clear plastic bag on my porch. Inside, the same disposable camera from her bedroom and bare footprints in the snow leading straight to my back door. I took the camera into town. The pharmacy still develops film if you ask nicely. I handed it over and waited a few hours. When I came back, the clerk didn't say anything, just handed me the envelope and walked away. There were 21 photos, all of them of me sleeping, brushing my teeth, eating breakfast, 5 of them taken inside my bedroom, 1 of me walking across the snow toward her house. I left town 2 days later, called her sister from a payphone, told her to ask the cousin not to come around anymore. Her voice was confused. She said Celia didn't have a cousin. I was 15 when it happened. My parents were heading out of state for the weekend. Some old friend of theirs was getting married down in Maryland, and they thought it'd be a fun little getaway. I stayed behind, mostly because of exams. Midterms were coming up, and I had a ton to study for. Plus, I hated hotels. I never slept well in them. We lived up in Haverlock, New York, kind of a sleepy town near the edge of Mallory State Forest. It had snowed the night before they left. Just a few inches, but enough to cover the ground in a clean white sheet and turn the road into a slip and slide. My dad warmed up the car for 10 minutes while my mom rushed around packing her curling iron and 4 different pairs of shoes. I stood in the doorway in my hoodie and socks, sipping tea and watching my breath fog the glass. They left around 7 that morning after reminding me twice to lock the doors, feed the neighbor's cat, and text if anything felt weird. They said they'd be back by Sunday night. That Friday evening was completely uneventful. I reheated a frozen pizza, watched some dumb sci-fi movie with way too much lens flare, and crashed early. I remember thinking how quiet the house felt. Not peaceful quiet, more like hollow. You know, when a place that usually has people in it suddenly doesn't, and you can sort of hear the emptiness? It felt like that. I left the hallway light on when I went to bed, which I didn't usually do. Not sure why. I wasn't scared exactly. It just made the space feel a little less hollow. Somewhere around 2 in the morning I woke up shivering. Not just pull the blanket up, cold, but full-on goosebumps. Freezing to the bone cold. I sat up confused and waited for the heater to kick on. It didn't. I got up and checked the thermostat. The screen was blank, not flashing or glitching, just dead. I tapped it. Nothing. The power was still on. The kitchen light worked. The fridge was humming. My phone was charging fine. Just the heater was out. I wrapped myself in my comforter, like a human burrito, and went down into the basement to check the breaker. I stood there, staring at the panel like I had any clue what I was doing. All the switches looked normal. I flipped a few back and forth for good measure. Nothing happened. I told myself I'd call someone in the morning and went back upstairs, still wrapped in the comforter. It was so cold the windows had a layer of frost around the edges. I remember thinking it felt like the cold was trying to sneak into the house through the seams. I curled up in bed with every blanket I owned and tried to get some sleep. At 3 I heard the sound. At first it was faint, a slow scraping, like something dragging across the back porch. I froze and held my breath. I figured it was a tree branch, or maybe the wind pushing something around outside. Then came a sharper noise, metal against glass. That sound made my whole body lock up. I climbed out of bed slowly and walked to the window that overlooked the backyard. Everything was white and completely still. The porch light was off, so it was hard to make out details, but I didn't see anything moving. I stood there for a long time, just staring, waiting for something to shift. Right when I was about to turn away, I saw them. Footprints. They hadn't been there earlier, I was sure of that. I could see a trail starting at the edge of the woods, leading across the yard, and stopping directly beneath the living room window. One trail, no return steps. My stomach dropped. I didn't go outside. I didn't even open the door. I shut all the blinds, double-locked every door, turned off every light except the one in the living room, and sat on the couch with the biggest kitchen knife we had. I held my phone in my other hand, thumb hovering over the emergency call button, but I didn't press it. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to be told it was nothing, that I was imagining it, that it was probably just some kid playing a prank. So I stayed awake, all night. By morning the trail was gone. A light layer of snow had fallen before sunrise and smoothed everything over. The backyard looked untouched again, clean, like nothing had happened. The heater still wasn't working, so I called the repair guy. He said he was booked solid until Sunday and couldn't make it out sooner. I made tea, wore 2 pairs of socks, and kept checking the windows like I expected to see those footprints again. The day passed slowly. Every sound the house made felt louder than usual. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind against the siding. I jumped at all of it. Around 6, just as it started getting dark, I heard more noises. This time from the roof. They weren't scratches or animal sounds. They were footsteps. Slow and deliberate. 1, 2, pause. Then again, it didn't sound like something scurrying. It sounded like someone walking. I turned on every light in the house. Kitchen, bathroom, porch. Even the one in the laundry room I never used. I stood by the front window, watching the yard, hoping the lights would be enough to make whoever it was go away. Then I saw the new set of prints. They weren't from the woods this time. They came from the road, just one set, again cutting across the neighbor's property and heading straight for our front steps, but not using the driveway, like someone had deliberately avoided it. I picked up the phone and called my dad. It rang and went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I left a message, said I was cold and asked when they'd be back. I didn't mention the footprints. I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. That night I slept in jeans and a sweatshirt, boots next to the bed, flashlight in one hand, knife under the pillow. I don't even remember falling asleep, but I woke up to a loud thud. It came from the kitchen like something heavy had fallen. I didn't move. I lay perfectly still, listening. Then I heard a single floorboard creak. Someone was in the house. My chest felt tight. I slid off the bed as quietly as I could, grabbed the knife and crawled to the door. It was open a crack. I could see the hallway. Nothing moved. I backed away and crawled into the closet, pulled the door shut behind me, and crouched there, heart hammering, trying not to breathe too loudly. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. They weren't looking for anything. They were just walking, almost like pacing. Then they stopped right outside my bedroom door. Long silence. Then the creak of the front door opening and closing. I stayed in that closet for hours. I must have fallen asleep sitting there because I woke up with my neck stiff and the knife still in my hand. Sunlight was leaking through the slats. When I finally got up, I checked the front door. Still locked, but the floor by the kitchen was damp. There were wet footprints on the hardwood. Just a few, leading from the kitchen to the stairs. And the back door, not open, but the latch was undone. I called the police. They showed up about 20 minutes later, walked through the house, asked a bunch of questions, wrote things down on a little notepad. One of them said it was probably a prank, maybe a neighbor, maybe someone drunk. I showed them where the footprints had been, but the snow had already started melting. Nothing was visible anymore, and inside the floor had mostly dried. They told me to call again if anything else happened. Then they left. I sat on the front porch for hours, waiting for my parents to get home. When they finally pulled into the driveway, I didn't tell them everything. Just said the heater wasn't working, and I thought I heard something outside one night. They called a technician to look at the heater. He opened the panel, took one look and said, "Someone unplugged this manually, not from the wall, from inside the control box." Someone had opened the panel, reached in, and disconnected the board. Intentionally, he said there was no way that could have happened on its own, and no one else had a key to the house. After that, I couldn't sleep without checking every lock, every window. For weeks, I kept waking up in the middle of the night thinking I heard footsteps. I started keeping a flashlight next to the bed, and never turned off the hallway light. Everyone else had left for winter break. Our rental house, this slouching old place on the edge of Fielding, a sleepy town in northern Vermont, was suddenly way too quiet. I stayed back on purpose. Finals had just ended, and I figured I'd enjoy a few days alone before heading to my aunt's for Christmas. That evening started off completely normal. I heated up some soup. I barely remember cooking, half-watched a movie I'd already seen, and stretched out on the couch under 2 blankets. The house was chilly, but not unbearable. I guess I must have dozed off at some point without noticing. I woke up to cold air on my legs. My phone lit up when I picked it up, 12:08. Not exactly late, but with the power out and no one else home, it felt later. And darker. Outside, the street was black. Not a single porch light. Just layers of snow and that strange, almost glowing darkness that happens when everything's white and quiet. Power outages weren't new. The house lost electricity at least once or twice every winter. It usually came back within a few hours. Still, something felt off. I couldn't figure out why it was getting to me that time. I got up and padded toward the thermostat, even though I already knew it wouldn't respond. Just habit, I guess. That's when I heard it. A door closing upstairs. Not slammed. Not being shut by wind. Just a smooth, quiet click. I stopped walking. Every door upstairs had to be closed manually. No weird air suction, no off-balance frames. And none of the windows had been opened. I hadn't even been upstairs that day. I waited there, barefoot on the hardwood, trying to listen past the buzzing in my ears. Nothing. Not a single creak or shifting board. The silence felt too thick, not peaceful, suffocating. I called out, something simple like, hello, but with that fake irritation people used to cover nerves. You know what I mean, trying to sound like you expected to be something harmless. But inside, I was tense. Every muscle just held no answer. I grabbed the small flashlight from the kitchen junk drawer, the one with the fading batteries and the sticky residue from an old label. I stood at the base of the stairs, debating whether this was a problem worth climbing into. Eventually, my body moved before I could talk myself out of it. I went up slowly, flashlight flickering slightly as I raised it. My room was first. Nothing moved, nothing changed. Drew's door was still shut, same with Mason's, but the last one, Addie's, was cracked open, wide enough to see the edge of her desk and part of the bed. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I even remembered brushing against the handle that morning when I passed it on the way to the bathroom. I pushed it open the rest of the way. Addie had gone home 2 days before. The room looked like she'd left it in a rush. Her suitcase was still half-zipped on the floor, curtains drawn. Bed made in that tight, efficient way she always did. Nothing looked moved. Until I saw the boots. By the window, just to the right of the desk, one pair of heavy men's boots. Not hers. Not anyone's I recognized. Thick soles. Black leather. Dried mud flaking off around the edges. The laces had little chunks of ice clinging to them, like they'd been outside for a while. I stared at them, my brain stuck on a loop. They weren't here before. They shouldn't be here. Why are they here? I didn't touch them. I didn't even step farther into the room. I backed out slowly, hands still clenched around the flashlight, like it could do anything if it came down to it. I shut the door and walked straight to my room, turned the lock, and sat on the bed with the flashlight in my lap. I tried calling my dad. No signal. Tried a couple friends. Still nothing. The little call failed beep felt like it echoed. I kept still for what felt like hours, though it was probably closer to 40 minutes. My ears strained for footsteps, creaks, the door again, anything, but it stayed silent, which somehow made it worse. Eventually, I tried to explain it away. Maybe Addie's boyfriend left the boots. Maybe she forgot. Maybe the door upstairs had just shifted from the cold. Maybe my nerves were shorting out from being alone too long. By 2 in the morning, I was half asleep again. That restless kind of half-consciousness where you feel like your body weighs 100 pounds. That's when I heard the front door, not kicked open, not rattled by wind. It opened slowly, then closed again. A smooth, soft click, like someone making sure not to wake anyone. I sat up so fast I felt dizzy. No voices, no footsteps. Just the low, almost delicate crunching of snow outside. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. There were footprints. One set, fresh, leading away from the house, down the front walk, across the yard, and straight into the woods at the back of the property. No tracks coming to the house. Just away. They started at my front door and ended at the tree-line. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat up with my flashlight on, back against the wall, staring at the door like it might swing open at any second. My breath felt too loud, my heartbeat too obvious. When the sun finally came up, I went downstairs to check the lock. It was bolted, which shouldn't have been possible. That deadbolt only locks for me inside. I packed a bag without changing out of my pajamas. Just grabbed what I could, shoved it in, cleared the windshield with my sleeve, and drove straight to my uncle's place in Renslow. Took the long way just to avoid any roads that cut through the woods. I didn't care if the roads were still iced over. I wasn't staying in that house another hour. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't even know how to talk about it. It sounds like the kind of story people politely nod at and then avoid making eye contact. But a few weeks later, Once we were all back and everything was normal, again I brought it up. Addie looked genuinely confused. She swore she'd never seen those boots before. Her boyfriend didn't even own winter gear like that, she said. And none of us, me, Drew, Mason, had anything that remotely resembled them. We even checked again, all of us standing in her room like detectives. The boots were gone. Her suitcase was gone. But she was adamant she didn't pack them. No one left anything behind. That was the last time I ever stayed in that house alone. My name's Arden. Last winter, right before Christmas, my partner flew out to visit her family back in Indiana, and I stayed behind at our place in Oregon. We'd only been living there for about 3 months at that point. The house itself was tucked way back at the end of a narrow, winding road outside of a place called Wilder Pines. When it snowed, which it had been doing pretty much non-stop that week, the place felt like it had been erased from the map. No plows came that far. If you didn't own a snow shovel and some patience, you weren't getting anywhere. And honestly, I liked that. So it started with the heater giving out. Nothing dramatic, just your typical old house struggle to keep up once the temps dropped. I'd been keeping the fireplace going pretty much all day and night, tossing logs in every couple hours. Around 7 that evening, I was sitting on the couch with a blanket and the mug of tea. Yeah, I do tea, sue me. When I heard a knock at the front door. Not just a tap. It was loud. One single knock. Sharp and deliberate. I kinda jumped. Looked at the clock. Too late for deliveries. Too cold for someone to be out just wandering. But I figured, okay, maybe a neighbor I hadn't met yet got stuck or something. I opened the door. Nothing. Just a whole lot of snow, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The porch light stretched out maybe 10 feet into the white. And that was it. No footprints. No movement. No car in the driveway. Just stillness. I stood there for a bit, holding the door open like an idiot, waiting for something else to happen. Then I stepped outside, leaned over the porch railing and scanned the woods. Nothing. Just snow settling on the trees. I went back inside, locked up, and tried to brush it off. Probably a branch had snapped against the siding or something. Houses do weird things when they settle, especially old ones in the cold. 2 hours later, I was upstairs folding laundry in the bedroom when it happened again. But this time it was at the sliding glass door. The one in the back of the house. The one that led to a snow-covered deck that I hadn't even stepped on in over a week. There was no working light back there. It had burned out the first night we moved in, and I just hadn't gotten around to replacing it. The knock wasn't loud this time. It was softer. Not polite exactly, but careful. I froze, still holding a towel mid-fold. My brain tried to explain it away again. Maybe ice shifting. Maybe some part of the deck expanding from the fire's warmth. But I already knew better. I walked across the room and turned off the light so I could see outside. From the window, I could just barely make out the outline of the sliding door below. And there against the glass was something. Something that looked like a hand, just one. Not pressed flat, not banging. Just resting there, fingers curled slightly. I blinked and it was gone. Didn't see it move, didn't see anything run off. Just gone. I grabbed the flashlight and went downstairs. Slid the door open slowly, heart thumping in my ears. Shined the light out onto the deck. Empty, but there were footprints. Not many, just a small line of them coming up to the door. They were deep, heavy. You could see the tread pattern clearly. And they didn't lead away. They came up to the door and stopped. No turn, no retreat, like whoever made them just stood there for a while, then vanished. I backed inside and locked every door I could, closed every curtain, double-checked the garage, sat back down on the couch with the fireplace poker next to me, and didn't even try to sleep. That kind of silence you get out there, no wind, no cars, no neighbors, makes every creak in the roof sound personal. By morning I convinced myself it had been some kind of weird trick of the snow. Maybe an animal that stepped in someone's boots. Anything really. I just didn't want to sit with the feeling that something had been watching me and walked away without making a sound. But the next night, around 6, the power went out. Everything shut off at once. No warning. No flickering lights or blown fuses. Just blackness. The fire was still going, thankfully. So I built it up again and lit a few candles. My phone still had battery, but no signal. Just 1 or 2 bars that wouldn't let a call go through. I texted my partner, just in case, even though I knew she wouldn't get it until later. At exactly 8, the knocking came back. Only now it wasn't one knock. It was a pattern. 4 knocks. Then a pause. Then 3 knocks. It was coming from the front door again. I didn't move. Just listened. A minute later it came from the back, then the side door, then the garage. Same rhythm, 4 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. It was moving, circling the house, like it was checking every entrance. I crouched behind the couch and turned off the flashlight. The fire was low now, casting flickers across the walls, and every part of me just felt locked up. I couldn't breathe right. I couldn't even swallow. The knocking kept happening, always that same rhythm. Then around 10, it started on the upstairs windows. That broke me. I hadn't shoveled anything around the back of the house. There were no paths, no stairs, and the windows were high up. You couldn't reach them without a ladder. And I knew mine was still hanging in the garage. I called out, "Who's there?" I don't even know why. Just instinct, I guess. There was no answer. Just more knocking. I finally got the courage to move again, and ran upstairs, shined the flashlight out the bedroom window, and that's when I saw them. The prints, not just a few now, dozens all around the house in wide sweeping loops, deep prints, but strange. They didn't come from the driveway, didn't connect to each other. They just appeared in clusters, like someone had dropped in, walked a few steps, then vanished again. I called my neighbor Kirk, older guy. Lives a couple miles down the road. I had his landline on a sticky note next to the fridge. He picked up after a few rings, groggy and confused. "I think someone's on my property," I said. "Where exactly?" "All around the house. There are footprints." And tapping on the doors. He went quiet, then asked, "What kind of pattern?" "4 knocks. Pause. Then 3. He took a breath. It sounded shaky. "Don't open any doors," he said. "I'll come by first thing. Don't talk to it. Don't go outside." "What is it?" He just said, "Don't answer again," and hung up. That night lasted forever. I sat with the fire poker in one hand and the flashlight in the other, just staring at the front door. The knocks came and went, sometimes minutes apart, sometimes longer. Once I heard a long dragging scrape along the back wall of the house, like something heavy sliding along the siding. Then it stopped and didn't come back. At first light, Kirk's truck pulled into the driveway, tires crunching through the snow. I ran outside, and he stopped me with a hand to my shoulder. "Let me walk first," he said. He made a slow loop around the property, while I waited on the porch. When he came back, his face was pale. "You touched those prints?" he asked. I told him no. He nodded once, like he already knew. "I've seen these before. Years back. My dad's old place. Same season, same knocking." He showed me one of the prints. "Look here. Right foot's always the same, like a stamp. Left one's off slightly different every time. Like it's trying to match us but doesn't know how." Before he left, he looked at me and said, "It doesn't like being ignored. That's why it leaves. But don't push it." I haven't seen it again, not since that week, but I've never stayed alone in the house since.